don't have an agenda.
Okay.
We got an agenda.
I'd like to call this meeting to order of the Lancaster County Council. I'd like to welcome everyone here on June the 5th, 2024, as we have our first reading of our budget. Mr. Cohen, would you mind shutting that back door for me? I'd appreciate it. And with that, would you please rise and join Councilmember Alan Blackman as he leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. Lord, we thank you for all the many blessings that you give to us. Lord, today we especially ask that you remember our sheriff and his family as they go through with the injuries that happened yesterday. Lord, just be with them, comfort them, and help his daughter with some healing. And Lord, give us wisdom here on this council that as we go about doing the business, that we first of all will take care of our citizens and our staff. And Lord, we'll do those things that are pleasing in your sight. These things we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Let's move on down to our approval of our agenda. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion from Mr. Carnes. I have a second.
Second.
Second from Ms. McGriff. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval. Mr. Graham will be here. He said he might be 30 minutes late. We have before we get into our citizens' comments, we will have a short executive session, but it shouldn't be over 10, 15 minutes at the longest. With that, we do have a couple of citizens. We have any electronic comments? We have two citizens. Please bear in mind, this is not a period of dialogue with council or a question and answer period. This is your opportunity to address council with your concerns. I ask that you address your remarks to council as a body and not to any individual council member. Please speak in the microphone, state your name and address for the record, and you will have up to 3 minutes to address council. Your time will not start until you have provided your name and address. First, we have Mr. Reverie Johnson.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in public forum. Reverie Johnson, District 4, Indian Land. The subject of fire department funding was discussed at the previous board meeting with relation to the upcoming budget. The residents of Indian Land have been asked to bear the burden of a special fee district to fund the standard operating costs of the 2 stations in Indian Land. This while the property owners in Indian Land pay a millage assessment and property taxes equal to the remaining portion of the unincorporated county. Out of the general operating fund arising from the collection of the property taxes, all remaining fire departments in the county are funded. The fire departments in Indian Land do receive fuel reimbursement. However, no other significant operating costs are paid from the general fund. The firefighters of Indian Land are some of the best, if not the best, in South Carolina, providing amazing service to our area. To wit, in Indian Land, we have 45 career, part-time, and volunteer firefighters. The balance of the county numbers approximately 270 career, part-time, and volunteer firefighters. The Fire Department of Indian Land runs 3,400 calls yearly. The remainder of the county, 5,800. So you can see that while we are 14% of the staff, we're handling 33% of the calls in Indian Land. This is all being borne out of the special fee district assessed to Indian Land. Now the county is trying to decide how to provide firefighters, equipment, and buildings to accommodate the explosive growth approved by this very council. At the last council meeting, a council member publicly stated adding firefighters, equipment, and buildings in Indian Land does not help my district. Therefore, I'm not inclined to support increased millage rates for all the county just to support Indian land. This attitude is short-sighted, small-minded, and mean-spirited. The council has demonstrated no issues raising millage rates on the entire county for projects that do not benefit Indian land in any way. However, we pay these assessments as we know that the county as a whole must succeed together or continue to achieve less than is possible separately. Raising the rooftop fee only for the Indian land residents to provide the fire coverage that the balance of the county takes for granted and receives from the general fund is not an equitable request. We are strongly in favor of the full amount that our firefighters have asked for and need to provide the level of protection this county council owes to Indian land. However, we are not in favor of being forced to pay the entire burden ourselves. We are part of Lancaster County for a reason. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Bruce Cohen.
Hello, my name is Bruce Cohen from Indian Land, Chrysanthemum Road, and thanks for letting me speak. And I wanted to speak, I liked what he said, firefighters deserve anything they ask. That's my personal opinion. Same with the police. They're here to help us. You know, it was brought up the other day about merit pay and bonuses for people who do better. And I just want to say my own experience. I ran a company, ran 6 trucks, 5 trucks went out every day, and the guys outdid most other companies. And when my company was bought, it was bought by a very large company. I was put in charge of 10 trucks. My 10 trucks outdid the other 40 trucks consistently because they knew that if they outdid them, they were getting bonuses. And next week, the company that bought mine asked me to come up and rearrange things for their Manhattan office. Every tree in Manhattan that's planted is planted by this company, and they're losing people. And I'm a troubleshooter. They asked me to come up there, and the first thing I'm going to install is bonuses for how many plants are put in. And that goes down to what you were talking about, people who do better. I personally believe, I'm a fiscal conservative, yet people who do better, I believe, deserve more. And the end result will be that even though you're paying more, it will cost less. That's been my experience. Government is a business, and that's how I look at it. Money comes in, money goes out, and that's a business. And I truly believe in bonuses, or as you called it, merit pay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cohen. That concludes our citizens' comment. Let's move on down to executive session. I need a motion to go into executive session for discussion and review of security issues and devices relative to the county administration building, sensitive equipment room, and invite the information technology staff and the deputy county administrator into executive session to discuss this matter. Do I have that motion?
So move.
Motion for Mr. Blackman, second for Mr. Mosteller. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval. We are now in executive session. I'd like to call this meeting, Lancaster County Council, back to order. Do I have a motion to come out of executive session?
So, second.
Motion from Ms. McGriff, second from Mr. Carnes. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval.
Mr. Chairman, council met in executive session in regards to one item, the discussion and review of security issues and devices relative to the County Administration Building Sensitive Equipment Room. No motions were made and no votes were taken.
All right, thank you, ma'am. Let's move on down to our non-consent agenda. First reading of ordinance 2024-1910 regarding approval of the fiscal year 24-25 budget. Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion for Mr. Carnes, second for Ms. McGriff.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, this is the motion as it stood amended at your last meeting with all the amendments that were made. So you're back to the budget as the amendments you made at your last meeting.
Okay. Mr. Marstall, Ms. Harris.
Do we have a copy of the amendment as it was entered at the last meeting?
Yes, so basically, the notebook that you're given today has the PowerPoint that reflects your changes, amendments, and Ms. Pavuznak will walk us through those. But yeah, what you saw in the document was the first reading, so we're going back to what was recommended budget, and you've started to make your amendments already. So we'll reflect there. She'll walk us through what you all have done. We have it all visual here to show what you've done, what the new tally is. And so today, since this is the continued first reading, we do have a pressure point that we have to do the public hearing notice for what the potential millage impact could be and setting the fee schedule. So we have to have that published 15 days before the final here for third reading, so it means it has to be published on Saturday. So we have to get it to the paper basically tomorrow to get published for Saturday. So we do need to walk out of here today with an understanding of where you are in terms of the fee schedule and if there's any millage impact. And so we will walk through. Ms. Harris had a loss in the family, so she's not able to join us today. But Ms. Pavuznak will walk us through what your actions were at the last meeting and kind of show you what the total of that is now, and then see how you want to move forward on first reading. So I'll turn it over to our Budget Director, Jamie Pavuznak.
Thank you, Mr. Marstall. Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
Okay, so you have your notebooks in front of you, I do hope. You have the presentation deck behind the first tab. And so this is page 9. You'll want to land there. So this slide should look familiar to you. These are your one-time fund balance appropriations from reserves. And so last week you saw this particular table. You've got this slide 9.
That's page 4.
Page 4.
Page 4?
Yeah.
In our booklet, our
In
new
our
booklet.
Ours is 4.
Are you guys all there?
Yes.
We here.
Great, okay.
The
Fund
numbers
balance.
are matching.
Yes, sir?
The numbers aren't matching. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
The reduction, the total decrease, I think, should be 265.
Okay, thank you. Fund balance appropriations. So here, this is a slide you saw last week. You have each department, the particular appropriation, and then how you directed us. So that first item, the merit pool at 125K, you directed staff to strike. You also directed staff last week to pull out the $40,000 for the public education campaign and community survey. And then finally, you struck out of this particular table your council contingency from your council budget at $100,000. So you see the old amount, the new amount is in yellow, and then the delta. And thank you for that catch. Very good, very good. Any thoughts, reflections there? Moving forward, moving on to personnel, you had various adjustments to existing staff on last week. So what you're going to see here are in yellow. So you advised staff to upgrade an existing vacant equipment manager position out at EMS to a deputy director. So the delta, so we're going to take that current salary and fringe for equipment manager. We're going to look at what a deputy director would make, and that 23.3 is the difference that you would add. It would be the adjustment.
I'm sorry. I'm on a rain delay because I was doing the math. So on the page 4. So if we deduct that 265 that is shown as the subtractions on the sheet, then the numbers that are left total 1,074,000. So something's not matching up. So was there an increase of 45,000 on any of these?
No, I think you're right. It's just a math error. So the 1074 should be 1029,240. Because you're right, we didn't account for the.
Right, but I think if you add the 125, the 353, 750, that adds up to 1,074,250.
I'm sorry, you added what?
If you add everything that's on there, it's 1,074,250.
We increased the ball field lights by 45,000.
That's what I was looking for.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monique, for that. So that's about halfway down.
Oh, and make sure I'm clear. The ball field lights were only increased by 45,000 because we originally had it listed as 5,000. That's what the error was.
Right,
Okay.
but that's why the math wasn't adding up.
Tell us again what you did.
So there's, under Parks and Recreation, the ball field lights, last week, the total amount was 5,000. It has now been updated to 50,000, but we neglected to highlight that on the screen so you could find it fast.
Okay. And that was the only adjustment that you made.
Yes, ma'am. In addition to what we struck, based on your direction from last week, the 125, the 40, and the 100,000. Thank you, Monique. Other thoughts, comments around this area? Okey doke. Moving on to personnel. So these are existing positions, and these are changes to existing positions that you advised last week. You directed staff to upgrade an existing and vacant equipment manager position in EMS to a deputy director position. Okay, so the change, so you're taking what's currently in the budget for the existing manager, you're adding 23.3K to get this individual up to a deputy director, or the position rather. You also directed staff under roads maintenance to strike reclassifying an existing road maintenance position to a director of facilities, and fund that at 3/4 of a year. So we backed that out, that 49.7 from last week. You have a new total highlighted in yellow of 211, and then the difference of 26.3K. Thoughts, observations on adjustments? Okay, we'll move forward. Position adjustments, still, we're talking about existing staff. And last week, you had conversation around if you go about halfway down or 3/4 of the way down in the table, council member pay increase, 1,000 each, for a total of 7,000. You directed staff to strike that amount and reallocate it to the risk manager position to bring that position up to minimum. So that's a net of 0. There's no change to the bottom line there. So that was your existing positions. Now we're moving on to new positions. Same familiar table from last week. These are your changes reflected. You directed staff to strike the grant coordinator position. That's that top row. You directed staff to strike the grant writer position. And you advised staff, which we'll see in a minute, to drop that amount for the grant writer into professional services. So you'll see that add in a minute. You also directed staff to add an additional corrections officer for a total of 2 corrections officers, one being 89.4K. And then you directed staff to strike the, your want to bifurcate fire rescue and emergency management. You directed staff to strike that director position from fire rescue and that amount. So now you have on the table 9 total new positions and a new amount of the 808 number, and then the delta between what you saw last week and this week, highlighted in yellow. New positions. So that wraps up the people costs. Are you guys ready to tackle the operating costs? These are the decisions you made last week for this. So you had conversation around the grant writer. You had directed staff to pull the body out, drop the amount, $98,000, into professional services, contracted services. And so that amount is either going to live in the administrator's budget or live in the finance budget. That's the only change made to the operations, the new requests for operations on this slide.
I don't think we approved no $98,000 for it, though. We just talked about doing contract, but where did those numbers come from?
But
I mean, that's almost a position that they were asking for, which we're trying to have some savings, and I ain't even $20,000 savings.
Yeah, we just actually, that was, the 98,000 was identified as a new position number. And so I thought the conversation was, don't hire a position, but consider contracting. And so we didn't hear a dollar amount. So we still think the contract for that position could be in that ballpark range.
I just don't think, to me, that's a pretty high number to contract out for grant writing right now. I mean, we're struggling for trying to cut some and save some here and there, and I think 98,000 is a little bit stout. I think that needs to be cut. You get all these grants and stuff, but we got to have matching money to go along with it, and we ain't got matching money. So I mean, you're spending $98,000. That's going to be a bunch of grant writing there. So.
And to make sure we're technical, this has not been formally amended. So to your point, this has not been formally motioned to be included in the budget. You all just asked us to bring this back to you, not as a formal authorization, so you could see where it would live. So you'd need to make an amendment to include this.
A cost.
I mean, I'm surprised it's in there because
we talked about a contractor position, but, what we also have to remember is and I don't know how the county will do it, but when you contract for a grant writer, you usually pay a percentage of the total of the grant, whether it's 5% or 10% of the total. So I don't know how we would calculate that, simply because we're probably talking about a half a year, so we may want to cut that in half to say when we're going to start. By the time we get to a grant writer and get the contracts and everything in place for this position, a consultant, it'll be in the second quarter of the year. So I think we could easily cut that in half and be able to contract out for that. If not, we'll know that if we got a grant coming up for, let's say, $2 million, and the grant writer is going to do how much of that, we'll know next year from the trend or how much we're paying. But I'm like Billy, I think 98 might be a little too much starting out.
Mr. Marstall, at any point, we can amend the budget later on, right? Okay.
We'll make sure we highlight what you've amended is reflected in here. This one, and actually the full amendment needs to be discussed for the EMS position. So those are the two that have not been formally brought up for amendment.
And the $45,000 for the ball field.
Correct. Correct.
The 45, what page is that on?
That was the
Page 4.
That's on your fund balance appropriation slide.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
wanna
because
take
we
these one
increased
at a
that by
time?
45. Yes, we did. Yeah, I think we need to
Let's
go
do
back.
them individually, yeah.
Anybody want to make an amendment on the lights for the ball field?
And that's going up from 5,000 to 50,000.
Yeah, we actually just had a typo in there. It's supposed to be 50,000, but it actually reflected in your last thing as 5,000.
What ball lights are we talking about?
What area you mean? What ball field?
Yeah, yeah.
Do we know which ball field? Is that Walnut Creek?
Chris here who might speak to that.
Right. Mr. Cloud will come forward from Parks and Rec.
Good afternoon, everyone. So our lighting system, such as Heat Springs and Harrisburg, are on a platform called Musco. It allows us to control them from our computer and from our phones, so it automatically automates everything. So from a programming standpoint, rental standpoint, it makes very much easy use. There's no manual turning them on and off. We want to take Beaufort and Springdale and put them on the same system. That's what it is. So it's not adding lights, it's not adding towers, it's not adding poles. It's taking the current system that's there and just upgrading basically the equipment and the software.
Okay. Now, how would I do the motion, Jenny? What do I need to say in there?
Fund balance.
Just to amend that amount in the fund balance to whatever you're looking for.
I make a motion to amend the amount in the fund balance to reflect the new amount. Is that good enough?
Which is
For ball
what?
lights.
Which is
For
for
ball-
ball field lights.
For 50.
50,000.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a motion from Ms. McGriff. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Mostello. Any more discussion on that amendment?
I'm going to vote for this, but before we get to concluding the budget, I'm going to want to talk about the revenue picture and what it looks like, how much new money we're having coming in, things like that. So just for the sake of moving along, I'm going along with this. But depends on our revenue picture and our revenue outlook that we hadn't discussed yet. I think a lot of this should depend on that.
This is fund balance here we're talking about.
Yeah, but still.
Still, it's our savings.
All right, we ready to vote? All in favor of this amendment, raise your right hand. Opposed likewise. The ball field lights passed by a vote of 6 for and 1 opposed. On these other positions, do we want to go on and vote on them, or do you want to hear the revenue
Well, I say actually, well, since you all
before?
discussed this once already, you may want to tackle that EMS one.
Upgrading them one?
If you want to upgrade that position, that was newly discussed last time. If you want to continue that,
I have a motion.
Actually, I'm going to make a motion, if I could, on the fund balance, since we're still there, if we could stay on that page. So I was going to make a motion to reduce the fund balance appropriations for the data room upgrade from 250 to 65,000.
Say that again. The upgrade to the,
To the data room upgrade, reduce it from the 250 to the 65,000.
I'm not supporting that.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to reduce the data room upgrade from 250 to 65,000.
Yes. Which covers the electrical upgrades of wall construction, sheet rock work, HVAC, sprinkler, and suppression work.
All right, any discussion on that?
No, I beg to differ simply because, you know, we're in an area that, when it comes to IT, that we really need to be careful about cutting and pinching in that area, because that's the area that could really destroy the county as far as being able to provide services. So I cannot, in good faith, vote for that. I mean, I just can't.
Any more thoughts on that? Hearing none, hearing no more discussion, we're ready to vote on that motion. All in favor of reducing that line item from 250 to 65, raise your right hand. Opposed likewise. That motion fails by a vote of 3 for and 4 opposed. So the 250 will stay in. Any more on the fund balance appropriations? All right, since we've discussed the EMS existing equipment manager to deputy director. Do I have a motion to accept that adjustment?
Motion to accept the adjustment to upgrade existing equipment manager to deputy director for $23,311.
I second that.
I have a motion from Mr. Carr, second from Mr. Blackman. Any discussion? All right, we're ready to vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval for that upgrade in that position. All right. We've already discussed these other existing positions. I'm looking for a motion to transfer the council member pay increase over to the risk manager.
You've already done that one. It was formally amended.
Okay,
I think the only one is the grant writing. That's
Correct, on page 8, yeah, page 8 of the presentation.
all right.
98, yeah.
All right, so we're back to grant writing. Are we looking for a motion on that?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead. Jenny, how can we, I think we need to keep some contractual amount in there, but maybe not at 98,000. Do I make the motion to a certain amount?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to reduce the contractor services for grant writing to, instead of 98,000, 49,000. That would be half of that total.
All right, do I have a
I'll second that.
motion from Ms. McGriff to reduce it to 49 and a second from Mr. Blackman. Any discussion?
Yeah, say I wanted to be zero.
Do what?
Say I wanted it to be zero.
You can make a
the
motion.
after the 40.
Amend her
We have a
motion.
motion on the floor
I
right
know
now.
she's got a motion on the floor, but if I
Her motion is to amend the
You can amend an amendment once, so you could make an amendment to amend her current motion.
Yeah.
Zero down to be a zero to a
Yeah.
zero amount as opposed to the 49.
yeah,
Or it could be voted on the 49.
Either
and then,
way, however
and then
he
we could
chooses to
amend
do
it.
Correct, either way.
How we gonna,
Terry, I think if you want yours considered, you ought to vote to amend the amendment, if you're serious about that.
yeah, I'm serious about that.
I'll second it.
Okay?
So that is a formal motion to move it to zero, correct?
Yes.
Okay,
we vote on that motion before we vote on.
yes, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, we have a formal motion to take out the $98,000 for contractual service for grant writing. Any discussion on that?
But I think if we get a grant that we want to contract for, then we can make that adjust the budget, or we can make it part of the grant.
Sometimes.
We have any more discussion? We're ready to vote on Mr. Graham's proposal or amendment. All in favor, raise your right hand. Likewise, it carries by a vote of 5 for and 2 opposed, so you can strike the 98,000. Okay. Now, we need to vote on is that all we need to vote on that? Because he amended the amendment?
Yes, because he technically it went from 98 to 49, and technically his amendment was 49 to 0, so.
So we're good.
Zero.
Okay.
So now we vote to pass the amendment as amended by Terry Graham, right?
Well, because it's down to 0, there's nothing to vote on at this point, because that's why I was clarifying. It went from 98 to 49 with Ms. McGriff's amendment, and then Mr. Graham technically amended it from 49 to 0. So now there's 0, so you went to an amount of 0, so there's nothing to vote on at this point. It's down to 0.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, council. Now we're going to move on to the external requests. These are your community partners that requested funding, and also the recommendation. So you're going to see each organization listed, what the budget is if they currently receive funding, their request, and then the county administrator's recommendation. The only change,
Did you get that information on Keystone, whether they were for-profit or nonprofit?
Yes, ma'am, they are a nonprofit. Miss Carrie McGuire responded to that. The only change here on your external requests is, well, you have two items here. The Council on Aging, last week, you directed staff to fully fund this request at $100,000 for LARS, the public transportation system. And you also had some questions about the Soil and Water Conservation District and their request. That was, well, what's in the request, and that does include the tort liability insurance, and it does include a part-time public education outreach coordinator for conservation efforts. So County Administrator Dennis Marstall is recommending the tort liability insurance, but not the part-time outreach coordinator. So that's what's in that 125 number.
But there's supposed to have been a raise in there for the one employee that they have.
The 2% is also included.
Yeah, that was my understanding that we was going to do the tort insurance and that employee would get across the same raise the rest of the employees get.
Where's that? Where you looking at?
But we do say there in the adjustment, plus a 2% increase.
Conservation, midways down.
Soil and conservation.
So that 2% is the raise to the employee?
Correct, sir? Yes, Mr. Carnes?
Okay.
So the 125 should include the 2% raise and the tort insurance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me ask a question. On the Council on Aging, the discussion last week, the 40,000, I think the county is obligated because they provide service through the LARS, which is a county function. So I don't remember talking about the $100,000 as far as we're going to fund it. We know we've got to do the 40, but I don't think we settled on an amount.
Correct. You're correct that it needs formal action. You all asked us to do a little bit more research. We do have Ms. Kylie Craig here from the Council on Aging. We did not find a contract.
Bring her up and
Okay.
let her, Ms. Craig.
Thank you for having me today. How are y'all doing?
I guess I'm pushing for this one. Would you kind of explain, justify why the county should commit more funding than we have in the past?
I'd be happy to. There's a couple of factors, and that's how we got to the $100,000 request that we submitted for this year. The first being that we needed an increase truly because the $40,000 has not been increased in several years. From my research, it goes back as far as 2005, 6, 7, 8, somewhere in that range. And just for pure inflation, the price of everything has gone up, and the buying power of $40,000 back in 2008 is not the same as the buying power in 2024. 2025. So we asked for an increase there, but additionally, because of our SCDOT funding and SMTF funding that we receive for the LARS program, just for our operational standpoint, our operating budget is $356,000 and some change. We require a local match of that of $133,000, and that match is required for us to access full federal and state funding. So for us to capitalize on all of our grants from SCDOT and SMTF, we have to have that $133,000 in place. The $40,000 that you all historically provided went into that pool of the local match dollars, but in the last year or two, we have amended that to be an appropriation rather than a true local match, because the local match term to SCDOT does not mean the same thing as it does in a traditional grant. It's just the way the funding structure works, and I can be happy to provide documentation on that, but it just gets to be a long-winded story there. But so it was moved to an appropriation in recent years. The reason for the ask from $40,000 to $100,000 is truly that we are maxed out on the amount of service that we can provide in the county with our current vehicle amounts, with our current staffing amounts, with the reach of the county. So just as how the population has grown in certain areas, specifically Indian land, it's not a secret that we have struggled to meet the demands of Lancaster County as it has grown. We're doing the best we can with what we have. Getting an increase of funding in this local section would again allow us to access the full amount of our SCDOT grants, thus increasing our amount in operating expenses, ultimately increased staffing, ideally increased vehicle amounts. We'll see how that goes with DOT contracts. But the total goal for us is to increase our service footprint across Lancaster County. We, on average, are turning down about 100 Medicaid trips, so our motive care clients who are purely receiving transportation to medical appointments or medically necessary appointments. 100 a year is a lot, in our opinion, across Lancaster County. On a leisure trip aspect, so pre-COVID, we were offering trips to the grocery store, to Walmart, pretty much wherever you wanted to go, we would take you. But we have been so inundated with medically necessary appointments and trips to employment opportunities, as much as we can take them, that we have not even touched the leisure trips in Lancaster County in about 4 years. We'd love to get back to providing that service to the citizens and assisting with that north-south mobility and assisting with access to resources, but we're simply just maxed out on what we can handle at the moment.
Callie, what's the cost per trip for medical services?
For the LARS program, what a client would pay. So within Lancaster County, it's a $5 charge one way. We did have to increase that from $2, but that amount had not increased in 20 years, so that was a necessary increase. Outside of the county to the Fort Lawn, Fort Mill, Rock Hill area, it's $10 each way, and then to get to Columbia or Charlotte, it's $20 each way.
And it was 2009 when we did the grant. That was the first year I was on council.
Yes, ma'am.
And we approved that LARS grant and the $40,000 match.
Correct.
So you are correct when you say it's been about 15 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Since we increased that $40,000.
Yes, ma'am. And unfortunately, some of that need for an increase, or excuse me, the non-request for an increase was on our end. We were not efficiently using our SCDOT funding, and we're not always asking you all for the full $40,000 because the grants weren't being utilized properly. We would maybe ask for 17, 18, sometimes 29. But now that we have our grant structured in this manner, we have a way to fully capitalize on any additional funding provided by the county.
So, Callie, what kind of expectations can council expect from this increase? I mean, I think y'all do need more money, no doubt.
Thank you.
And so if we went full 100,000, what kind of additional services or number of trips could we expect that our citizens would get for this 100,000?
Sure. So a technical number of physical trips would be tough to estimate just because that depends on the demand. So I would guess, being that we do about 110, 120 trips a day, that we would be able to get close to probably about 160, 170 trips a day. But it depends on where those trips are being requested. If we're within Lancaster County, that number goes up because those trips are faster. They're under usually a 10-mile range, so just the sheer trip length is shorter. If we're looking at, we want to push more money towards those out-of-town trips like the Charlotte and Columbia, obviously those take more of a driver's time, take the vehicle out of the area, so those would be closer on the lower end of that 160. I would say that it would be more in-town trips. We would prefer to prioritize the needs within Lancaster County simply because north-south mobility is such an issue and resources are almost clustered in the county. And that would give our clients more access to those resources by being able to provide more leisure local trips. That has been the biggest frustration when we surveyed our clients, is that you can only go to the doctor. You can only go to a pharmacy. But as we know, there's a lot more that goes into total wellness and the full impact of health than just going to your doctor's office. So we would like to be able to get more into those leisure trips to really support the citizens of Lancaster County.
So if it was in Lancaster County kind of trips. The numbers you just quoted, 100-something to 160, we're looking at maybe a 50% increase in the number of local trips.
Ideally, correct.
No, I mean,
It's
Well-
tough to say because it's based on need. So I can't
but
100.
well, let's just say if the 40% might be a better realistic number that we could expect for this additional money.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's close enough.
Holly, while you're up there, and I know
Sure.
you're not requesting, but what's the status of your Meals on Wheels?
We are full steam ahead with Meals on Wheels. I'm very happy to announce that we've maintained a zero wait list since November of 2023, which has not happened in about 18 years. So
Wonderful.
that was a huge feat for us. We're putting out about 310 meals every single day, and that's across Lancaster County, so from top of Indian Land down to Kershaw. And it's a growing program. The need is always there, and we've had some great success with tying in some community partners such as the Eris Foundation, as well as renegotiating our contracts with the Catawba Area Agency on Aging for additional support.
Great, great.
Thank you.
And, you know, we are an aged population.
Y'all are young compared to
Speak
my
for yourself.
friends.
We are an aging population.
Not y'all. You should see some of my
And,
friends at the senior center. Y'all are just fine.
Thank
All
you.
right, any more questions for Ms. Gregg? All right,
What
thank you.
action
If
do
we
we
got any
need to
more
take on
questions, we'll
this?
call you back.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
ma'am.
much.
We do need so the recommended is 60,000, so that's factored in right now. If you want to adjust that up or down, just need an amendment either way.
I make the motion to adjust it to 100,000.
Second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Blackman and a second for Mr. Carnes to up that for 100,000. Any more discussion? All right, we're ready to vote on that amendment. All in favor, raise your right hand. All right, we have unanimous approval to raise the Lancaster County Council on Aging's budget request for this year to 100,000, and of course, next year is another year, and we'll look at it. All right, go ahead.
All right. Now we're shifting gears over to your heavy equipment and your vehicle replacement program. So this is your capital improvement fund, another slide that you received last week. We had lots of conversation around the sheriff's office vehicle replacement program. You know, he has that federal earmark. And so in order to find a consistent and reliable home for the sheriff's office vehicles, staff is proposing it land in Fund 11. And so in order for it to live there, we are proposing a 2 mil increase. That's in the green box there. The current mill for this fund is 5.3, the increase 7.3. And so this fund would be a total of 3.5 million if approved today, or if approved.
So 3.5 million equals 7.3 mills.
Yes. Or thereabouts, a little bit under.
I got a question. What is all these fleet vehicle replacements? 985,000. What vehicles is that? I mean, it's not the sheriff's vehicles. That's a lot of cars.
It can be anything from the coroner's office replacement to planning or, any vehicle replacement, Parks and Rec, Economic Development, any department. We have a motor pool, but then, for instance, we do have assigned vehicles with the coroner's office and others.
I thought we was going to take some of the vehicles we've taken out of service for the sheriff's office and use for that.
We do rotate cars around all departments and even the motor pool, yeah.
But we still don't want to spend close to another
Would,
dollars for replacing vehicles.
Yeah, the cost of replacement's gone up. We can give you the exact breakdown.
Break that down for you.
does anyone have a desire to see that list of vehicles and the mileage?
Well, I'd like to know what it is. It's a
Before
pretty,
second reading.
it's almost $1 million.
After second
We'll have
reading.
that information before second reading. That be, everybody good with that?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, do we know how many vehicles we're talking about
We're
without the breakdown?
going to have the breakdown for second.
I know, do we know the
But
number?
yeah, how
Just off-
many?
Don't know off the top of my head the number of vehicles to be replaced in that 985.
And I do, like I said, we'll give you the breakdown, but I also think there's some other public works vehicles in there, and so we'll break that down for you.
If you figured an average of 50,000 a vehicle, you're talking about around 20.
Other thoughts, reflections around the replacement fund? Okay. Moving forward, in summary, so your budget is balanced. What you have in front of you is balanced. You have interest in a 3.5%, 5% across the board salary increase. That's what we heard from last week. You do have interest in the one-time Christmas supplement. There are 9 new full-time positions for consideration. You went through an exercise today where you upgraded and adjusted existing positions. So the full package of all your wants would be a 4.2 operating mill increase. So this particular slide is important for you to digest here. The things that you can do without a no mill increase are in column 1. And then where you start to, if you look at across the board salary increases, you had asked for the scenarios of, a 5% career ladder for the sheriff's office. Those are the sworn employees there. What does that total look like? What does that total look like for a 3.5% across the board merit increase for all non-sworn employees, all of us? There's, you've got that variance column that you like to see. And so right in the middle there is where across the board is where you start putting your package together. And then if you had all the wants in the world that you've talked about, discussed over the last few months, that would land you at 4.2 mil. And then this is the history. And so if you're looking at what the current year millage is for the general fund and county, that's 88.8. And there's that 4.2 when you're adding the 93. That would be if you purchase the package that you just created. County debt, as you know, the auditor's office certifies that for us. That decreased to 6, so that's highlighted in yellow. If you decide to move forward with the 2 mil increase for your capital improvement replacement fund, that's now 7.3. And then moving across, it's that last line, county court security, that's your court mandated security, that's not changing. Your new total across is 110. And when you look at the difference between last year, the 104 and the 110, you get the 5.3. Does everybody knows where we are? And then, of course, the auditor's office certifies 1 mil for us. And then that's that last number there on the slide, $518,000. A little more. And that's where you are for today.
And so in the ordinance, we did not factor in the 5% across the board increase that we've identified for the sheriff's office. And so the ordinance only lists a 3.5 mil increase. We had the 3.5% raise. If you want to do, if Ms. Pravuzak will back up a slide to that one. So if you want to do that pay adjustment to the 3.5% across the board and 5% for the sheriff sworn, we'd have to adjust the millage from what's currently stated, raising the mills 3.5 for operating to the 4.2 for operating. And then you have the adjustments for the capital improvement 2 mills.
I think we need to discuss our revenues and stuff before we go into discussing pretty much any further with this. So.
Sure, if because the only 2 things we have left is talking about the capital and then the Indian land fire. So if you want to talk about revenue of the operating budget and stay here, or if you want us to finalize, we'll take your lead.
Well, one of the things, going back to the capital improvement fund, did we discuss the floor? We got gym wall padding and flooring for $250,000. What
Where you at,
flooring?
Alan?
What page you on, Alan?
This would be page 12 in our book of today. Gym wall padding and flooring.
You at page 12?
Page 12.
Page 12.
The fifth item down.
Okay.
This is also a number that we've used in the past to provide Park and Recreation, Chris's staff with infrastructure maintenance and upgrades. Are you
I'm behind you. Yes, ma'am. Question.
What goes into the gym wall padding and flooring? Is that for all 3 rec centers, or where would that be?
The gym padding is for all 4 recreation centers. 2 of them have the bare minimum. 2 of them do not have any wall padding currently on the walls. The flooring is, I think, just for 1 recreation center. I think all 3, Springdale, Buford, and AJ, are still operating off of their original floors from whenever they were built. So that's what's in the CIP, is to start eventually replacing them to put in better gym floors for us to use for various sports programs and events.
So which flooring are you doing now for this one?
I think it's Springdale is what's slated for part of that. I can't remember off the top of my head, Councilman, I'm sorry.
And I know for those of us who do go and watch basketball, that gym wall padding is critical. Because the kids fall against that wall, they could very easily get hurt. So that to me is a necessity.
Park and Rec did identify it as as a safety matter, Ms. McGriff, the flooring and the gym wall.
Any more discussion on the flooring?
I believe at one time up in Indian Land, we didn't have padding on the wall, and we had somebody knocked into it and broke their arm.
Very critical.
All right.
Do you want to, we can do the Capitol and Indian Land if we want to talk about something else before we move off of the operating?
So why does 2 brush trucks up in Indyland cost $296, and somewhere back here, I think we had 1 brush truck at $296?
Page 12.
Page 12, as opposed to,
And that is for what area?
Well, it doesn't specify the number in there. It just says 296,601.
That is generally 2 trucks. That's what they generally rotate out, is 2 every year.
And that's on a rotating, that's on a cycle. Okay.
so that's 148,000 per truck.
That'll be the 3,500 series trucks.
It's probably got a skid on the back, more than likely. Darren probably.
Mr. Player.
And if we're on a cycle,
It is
y'all, we don't need to
296.
touch
That was a Scribner's
Don't need to
error.
mess with
Mr.
us.
Player's coming.
Player's coming.
We always do 1 brush truck in the Fire Commission budget every year. It is in Fund 11. The cost of that truck alone is about $82,000. Then you get the ancillary things that go along with it. Brush truck's actually a misnomer because initially that's a staff truck that runs out of the office and responds.
1 year.
You've also got recommended 2 firefighters. That's another truck. It would be called brush truck because it goes into that same program because we're rotating them out. At the end of the life as a staff truck, it then rotates into the brush truck program. We are to the point now to where we're beginning to rotate some of the oldest ones out, some that are 20 years old. A 97-year model truck will be coming out this year. So that's where that's at. Now, I don't have the exact numbers of the pump, the tank, and all of the other things that go along with that, but that's how we get to that number.
So this is probably two or three trucks.
I think it's 3 trucks, but I know for sure it's 2.
And it's on that cycle of replacement.
Yes, ma'am.
But it's not
But
real.
part of it is that we've added staff, we've got staff recommended, so that's an extra truck. We have a number of trucks that we've added with staff, so we were trying to pick up the second one to get another staff vehicle rotated out that's right at 100,000 miles.
But it's not really a brush truck.
I'm sorry,
It's not really a brush truck. It's,
not to begin
We'll have the
with.
detailed second reading.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Does that satisfy everybody?
yeah, I mean, I was thinking it's a brush truck, not a,
It is not to begin with. We do a two-cycle program. We use them as staff trucks, then they become brush trucks.
So this would get 2 new trucks to our new employee and replacing an older one. And the older one would go down to the brush truck program.
Buford would actually get the one that's the 97 truck. It's actually a 250. All these others are 350.
It's one of the first ones that was
It
put
was
out there,
deferred,
but
yes, in that program. That program's been going on for about 20 years.
All right, go ahead.
Where we at?
Reactions to Fund 11.
Fund 11.
Good?
Y'all want to look at the revenue before we make any other recommendations, or you want to
I
go?
guess the
do. I think we
revenue is
need to.
going to help us decide on the budget summary, right? That's what we're looking to look at the revenue before we decide on the pay increase and all that other budget balances and everything.
All right.
Are you shaking your head, Alan?
I would love to talk about revenue.
all right, let's start.
I was going to look at expenses.
Go to page 15.
I'm flexible,
page
man.
15, or
I'll look at both of them.
Okay.
one more.
We can look at revenue first.
The summary sheet, do the summary, right, with the salary increase across the board. So go forward, yeah. One more, there you go, yeah. So we are showing a $3.3 million in new revenue, is that correct? Which generally is absorbed from the increase in the health insurances we have outlined there. We have the new federal overtime rule that we're addressing there, as well as the salary increases. And we did do some reductions that we have on there as well.
All right, where we at? Where we at? We just kind of at a standstill here.
There needs to, at some point, wherever you're comfortable, we have to put in the ordinance what millage we need to state for the public hearing for the operating, what millage. The ordinance currently states 3.5 mills. With the salary adjustments that you all asked us to review, that would take it up to 4.2 mills for the operating budget.
Okay. So we're looking at revenue now?
Yep.
Go to page 1 of 25. If we look at ad valorem taxes current,
Where are you?
on page 1 of 25,
Line item, revenue?
so we increased from,
What number you on?
I'm on the middle of the page, 10-4-011-400. So we went from 29 million in '03 to where we're collecting at this point 33 year-to-date, which is probably all the collections currently have come in, obviously, for this year. So that was a 4.4% increase. But when we go over to what's being recommended, I don't know that ad valorem taxes are going to go down. So we're sitting at 35,000 versus 33.7, so that would be a $1.3 million increase. But we increased $4 million the year before. So why would that not be a higher number? Why would the 35,037 not be at least 36,037?
That's a finance question,
Well, we got finance here, don't we?
and that's a trend question, and that's a projection question. That's not us, that's them.
It is us.
And I think they've made that
How
recommendation.
do we come to that $35,000 figure?
Well, the presentation that was back in April, we did very conservative estimates as far as growth, so 2 to 3% growth. Based on collections, prior year collections going back 3 years, and that's on revenue.
So you didn't base it on how many new homes might be going on the rolls? You just said 2 or 3%.
Yes, sir.
So Alan, are you saying that number needs to be higher?
Yeah, I'd like to make a
According to
motion
your
that we move that number to 36,037,698.
You have nothing to go on, Alan. You got to give us more than that. I'm
I
sorry.
just gave it to you, Charlene.
No.
23 to 24 jump.
No,
And
I
then
need
the-
a little
and
bit more before you just.
Look, I'm making a motion. If somebody seconds it, we move on.
Second it so we can have the discussion. Because I'm not.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion to move the revenue up from Mr. Blackman, second from Mr. Williams. I mean, the revenue, we just got a documentation of what
To
actually
justify.
collected.
To justify this recommendation, Alan, your numbers are your numbers. If they've justified this by
We have a number.
their numbers, that's what I want to go with. I would much rather to be conservative than not.
We do have a number for your files here that we were able to pull up.
Yeah. So what we gave you in, at the recommended budget on May 8th, we did show that revenues for the ad valorem, the actual, through April was 33.7 million. So that's through April. And so knowing how some of the revenues come in, we did go back with the auditor and treasurer. And so then we did extrapolate out a little bit more for May, June.
This is an assessor up here.
The new
Yeah, keep going. I don't know if the auditor doesn't.
I'm sorry, the actual number that we're looking at is actually from the end of April.
We gave, yeah, well, I'm saying we gave you
correct.
that we had an actual amount in April.
There are 2 months.
We have a new number, if I may.
Yep.
The new number is $3,281,632 in new revenue
Through,
through May, I think it was through May.
is this the ad valorem?
Yes.
Is
What would that total?
that the grand total through
We
May?
need the grand total, so.
3 million total.
Yeah, that's fine.
Can you give us that total number to date?
36.
I mean, Alan, you might be right, but I need,
All right, say that one more time.
I say you might
Well, what
be
is it?
right.
We'll come back with the exact revenue.
The new,
We'll come back with that, yeah.
But I need more justification than Alan saying it.
you do have in this line here that Mr. Blackman is referring to, the 33.7 million is what we have received in ad valorem revenue as of May 28th. So that's what's on the books. That's been collected. 33.7 million is the actuals, which you requested the line item detail. You got it. You have 33.7 million through May 28th.
So the recommended amount should be different? Or have you adjusted it according to that?
We've adjusted up 2 to 3%.
Okay.
Because we project, that bills are coming in, but this is a pretty good number. It's through May 28th.
But what are you projecting through June 30th? What are you projecting June 30th? And then you should increase it by 2%.
Well, June, really, this is current. This stuff was paid prior to January 15th, or January 15th. Anything after that would be delinquent. So the number's pretty accurate at 33,786, I would assume.
Yes.
And we had a $4.4 million increase from the prior year to this year. They're not looking at new valuations adding to the book, which would really tell us the real number. They're just going with a conservative 2.3. So if you add 4.4 onto the 33.7, you're looking at 38.1, and they're at 35. I'm sitting there going 36 would be a nice conservative estimate to go to.
You need to have a conversation with with the finance department and bring it back for the second reading, because I am not going to make any recommendations until I see it on paper. Wait a minute, Al, let me finish. I would much rather be conservative than overstate the amount. And if you're not, and I know you're Department of Revenue man, I understand that, but if we're gonna work on these numbers, let it come from the finance department and not you.
Well, if they would actually come up with a methodology that would be more specific, I would be good with that.
Well-
Meaning, how much value do we add in new building construction every year? That would be a heck of a trend line to know. But based on this, I've already made the motion. We got a second at 36,037,698. So it's up to vote time now.
I thought we had some slides at one time that was showing how many residential units we've added, and they were much lower than they have been in the past.
Would it be not formal to make this, let's not just go by numbers that we throw out? Alan, you get with Dennis. Dennis, you get with the finance department. And on the second reading, bring us a recommendation back that we can look at the numbers and how we got to that amount. Is that okay, Alan?
No, we're going to vote on the motion in a second.
Okay, go ahead, but I'm not.
And then if y'all want more information for the second reading, that's fine.
No. We doing somebody else's job. Let the person we pay to do this, where we can formally get the correct numbers and not adding it up here at the table. I would much rather go that route.
Our revenue estimate is up from actual year-to-date. We're estimating only a what percentage increase?
Probably a 2%
To
increase.
3% increase based on CPI.
2%?
Not
Yes.
based,
2 to 3% growth based on CPI, Department of Labor. That's where the information came from.
but is that based on actuals or are you using last year's budget as a baseline?
I am using actuals, the 33 million.
So 33 million.
And that was the
Plus 2 to
revised
3%
presentation
is-
that we provided you. I think when we came back the second time to talk about it, we shifted. We met as a team, we shifted, we revised the slides, and we landed on the 35 million number.
You had a motion on the floor.
We have a motion. Let me think.
We basically,
This is just the first reading, and so this motion can also be, if it's defeated, it can be brought back up on the second reading. Correct? All right, I would like, some more justification, I think, of, can we get a comparison of the values from the 22 building permits to the 23 building permits?
Yeah.
Not the permits, is what's
Exactly.
closed out, the COs.
The CO,
Yeah, because you still got to
yeah.
delay till you get that
Yeah,
CO to get it
yeah.
added onto the values.
But we can give you permit information, or, if there's some other factors you want us to present.
It's closeout,
I agree, if there's some other
not
factors.
permits.
I'm with you.
All right, so I might support a, increase in the future, but I'd like to see some numbers. So we have a motion right now to raise the revenue projection from 35 to 36 million on the first reading. Any more discussion on that? All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed likewise. So on first reading, that motion fails
But I would also like to see the same information.
by a vote of 2
Change
for
once
and
I see
5
some more
opposed.
numbers.
And I won't be here second reading, so I'll leave all my questions with Alan.
Alan, he'll get all of them for you.
Charlene, I'll get you the right answer.
I know you will.
And And would you also update the vehicle taxes, because I thought that was closer to 4.9 million?
And we did revise that once, but we'll give you the same information. Yeah, we'll update that as well.
Give the same information.
Yeah, we'll review that. Yeah, we'll review that.
All right.
Where we at?
We talk about the expenses now?
Any more questions on revenue?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
All right, go ahead.
Well, it's anyway, fee of lieu, which is the next to last one on the front page. Front page that we've been looking at.
One?
And then I just wonder how they came up with that number, which I think, again, comes back to they'll just give it, since y'all don't want to do anything, I think we need some justification on that. And then the other part is, well,
Fee and lieu.
like when I go to page 2, I just want to point out the third from the bottom, when we're talking about this local option revenue, and it doesn't seem to be this year coming up to maybe 90% of what we budgeted last year. That might be an indication that we're not in a good economic time, which I think would lend itself to the argument that we need to be careful with our millage increase with our citizens, asking them to give more when in fact they're spending less.
I think those numbers are reported in their arrears, so we wouldn't know the fourth quarter until after the fourth quarter closes, probably in July, because that all comes from the Department of Revenue, doesn't it?
Sales taxes filed monthly. I don't know if they report to us monthly or not.
On the fee, getting back to the fee and lieu, do you want to see the justification of what?
Yeah, how they came to that calculation, other than just a 2 or 3%, do they have any real hard data?
We'll get that for you.
Because, I mean, there's only so many fee and lieu agreements, so it wouldn't be very hard to figure it out, what that number should be.
Well, what did you say about the local option? What did you say about that?
I'm just saying that we're not meeting what we budgeted. Of course, we're 11 months into it. It looks like we might match last year's numbers. And I'm just saying there's no real growth in that number projected out based on my calculations, based on this limited data. So all I'm saying is it might mean that our citizens are having a rough time.
I'm saying, what do you want the staff, the finance department to do with that? Do you
Nothing,
want-
that's an easy number,
just a
whatever the
statement.
Department of Revenue reports does.
If I can interject, I can confirm what Mr. Carnes said. We don't receive the fourth quarter payment until July after the fiscal year ended. So we will post it to the local.
So this is through the third quarter.
Okay.
So you're basically getting about 2.15 per quarter if you project it out.
If we go to page 4, what is in the middle of the page, trust fund overage? It is $201,698 when we're budgeting $15,000 this year and the future year. What is that, and why is it so high?
Where are you at?
Middle of the page.
Page 4, in the middle of the page.
The actual at 201,698?
Yep.
Let us talk to the treasurer so we can verify that for you.
And then when we look at page 5, we just got a lot of blank spaces. A lot of blank spaces over here on year-to-date. Not sure why you would do that at budget time. When we go to page 7, none of those figures are filled in for 24, 25 with these special fees. Go to page 8, same thing. Permit zoning, permit alarms.
Mr. Chair, can we do this? Because if we're going to go through page by page, I think
Well,
Alan
we only got 25, Charlene, so let's just look at page
We got
9.
25 pages to go through. It's
Okay, no.
10 minutes to 4.
There's not a lot of,
I'm just saying there's a lot of stuff missing, and I'm just pointing it out.
I think the question,
And if we look at, I've got the floor, if we got page 10, we've also got state salary participation. I don't know what that is, and it's also referenced to other places in this document. Page 10 of 25, 12 of 25, and 14 of 25. Does anybody know what state salary participation is?
Mr. Chair, what I was saying is that if Alan's got concerns about these 25 pages, I think he needs to write it down and give it to the finance department or Dennis to justify and give an explanation on that.
Well, that's what we're doing, we're outlining
Mr.
it.
Blackman to go ahead and go through. I mean, it's not this isn't 5 or 10 minutes. He's to
It won't take a couple more minutes.
And I do want to make sure that we're writing these down so we come back with information. And I don't want to give you misinformation on the fly, but I think some of these state ones where the state does give supplement for different elected officials, and so we have different revenue lines for those, and that might be one of those when you ask. But we'll give you the detail on that.
Okay. And you can look at page 10, 12, and 14 of 25. Got some blanks in 13, 14, and also 15, 16.
Where does our
17.
interest income show up?
It is a separate line item.
Page 18 has a lot of blank spaces.
Yeah, a lot.
I mean,
Well, actually, I think some of our interest, I'll talk to the treasurer again. I believe some of our interest income is separated out by fund, meaning we have to keep the ARPA interest separated, so I don't know exactly what line item it's reflected in here, but most of our interest income is separated out by fund. So we'll work on pointing in that exact direction.
Because the interest income should be a lot more than it's.
Sure, yeah.
yep. Page 22 has a lot of missing information. Page 23, page 24. And then if we get to page 25, when we look at total revenue, actual so far this year is $76,649,000. And so that would be 11/12 through the year. So we got 1/12 of the year to get by, which would be 8%. If you multiply that times 1.08, we come up with 82,781. We're looking at 91 million there. I just think that might need to be rethought by our staff before we come back to second reading.
Mr. Blackman, if I can address some of your questions. The interest income is on page 2, and we put it in the county council's budget. So the report is broken out by department. And so the reason that there's some blanks is because not all departments collect the same type of revenue.
Because departments what?
All the departments don't collect the same type of revenue. So there's blanks in it. We have the account set up. That doesn't mean that we expect it to generate revenue in that department.
But you did have it on the left side, but maybe not on the right side on some of those pages.
Well, it could be.
Just take your time and look at it before we come back second reading. We'll expect an updated report, and if they're blanks, I'm sure y'all can explain them then, because I'm trying to save time for Ms. McGriff.
thank you.
Thank you. All right, that was my questions.
Mr. Harper, did you want to move forward with the capital funding plan in the interest of time?
What's that?
Do you want to move forward with the capital funding plan in the interest of time, sir?
Or just a question for staff. On the, there's been some questions on River Chase special fee. Is this, it's on page 7. Where does that money I think you answered it. Where does it go? Didn't you answer?
Yeah, I did ask that question, and I was told it went into the general fund, but I'd like to know where it goes into the general fund.
The Rivershare special fee?
Yes.
Terry, you looking on page 7 there in the middle of the
I'm
page?
looking on 7.
Then I think another question would be, why did it drop?
Well, it's based on rooftop fees.
Yeah, it is. There it is. There I see a special fee.
That's what that revenue is.
So they
There's a
dropped.
there's a formula, and it depends on how many get their assessment that year for that, so it can fluctuate. But we do, as Mr. Graham highlighted, this just does go into the general fund revenue. It doesn't have a stipulated account, but we show the revenue stream with the River Chase name.
So what I need to do to make that go into a special account?
So if there were 2,000 River Chase homes, a year ago, 23, they paid 274,000.
There's
Probably
not,
a few more homes added on there, but I don't know that. But they only paid 161. Is that
there's not 2,000. That's when it's built out. It'll be 2,000. There are probably 180 or something like that currently, and it also. For a long time, there wasn't but 50 or 100 in there. I mean, it was very slow developing that development.
And there's a cost escalation cap in there where
$8,000 rooftop fee when you
No.
build a building. That's what
it is? Okay. So
I think it capped out at like
does.
8,000 or something.
there's another downturn.
Set up a long time ago.
I think that after the budget, that's something that.
But they're not building as much.
Request that we look
Look at what.
this funding should be restricted.
I believe it should be restricted
Ask them how. We didn't use that.
because originally it wasn't restricted way back in 2007 or whenever it was put in place.
Do you know what the restriction were?
There was no restriction. It could be done whatever council wanted to do. It basically said that.
After the budget's over, you'll.
Yeah, I want to revisit that.
Okay, all right. All right, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Before we advance to the Capitol and Indian Land, we do need to have a statement or a motion about the millage for first reading so that we can go for the public notice.
Well, before we do that, I had some questions on the expenses for the operating budget. So in the building department budget, salaries, page 27 of 107. So, and it is 10,703,1,500. So in 22 to 23, it was about 700, 689, 690. The budget for last year was 909, and so far this year we're at 674. And yet for next year, we're recommending about 940. So I'm trying to figure out why we have that much more, when the only thing that it looks like we're recommending is the salary increase.
What department is this?
It's the building department?
Yeah, I know where it's at, but I'm trying to figure
The
out.
short staff in the building department over the year. I mean, that's why the actual,
Yeah, correct. So there are vacancies in there. So if you're looking at the actual versus the requested.
So, correct. So you're about the same number that you were for the actual of all of 22, 23. We're at the same number 23, 24. So for 2 years, we haven't needed any additional folks because we haven't added them when we've budgeted for them. So I'm trying to figure out, why do we think that we need them now for 2024, 25? Are we anticipating a building boom?
Well, we definitely need a deputy building official. So that's one of the vacancies that we've had. We also have some inspector vacancies. And so just like our mechanics, where we've had those vacant positions for 2 years, the corrections officers, even a deputy, we do want to carry those forward because our intention is to fill those positions.
But we haven't, and we've been able to operate without them. So I guess my question is, why do we need them if we haven't needed them for 2 years when we've had more growth than what we're anticipating going forward?
Well, it's a workload assessment. I mean, just like a mechanic, we may be down mechanics, but the other ones certainly are pulling the load. Same thing with our inspectors. When we have the multifamily units and things that require more inspections, our staff has done a great job on picking up the load, but they can't carry it forever without some help. And so we do want to refill these positions.
So are our building inspectors, are they only doing building inspector tasks, or are they doing tasks for other departments?
I think fundamentally, they're doing their building inspections.
They also review plans.
Oh, they're part of, yeah, definitely part of the plan review, certainly.
And a couple of years ago, if you look, we have contractual services of $200,000. And that is because
To help fill.
a lot of that stuff has to be sent out. We don't have the, I think we lost one of our commercial reviewers. And I don't know, but is that one position they're trying to fill?
Yes,
And we could reduce contractual services in the future.
potentially, but yeah.
But at this point, I don't think we can.
So, but I guess that's my question. We've been operating during a higher growth period, unless you're saying that we're anticipating to continue growing.
I'm saying we hope to continue to grow because I'm sure at this point we are working some staff people more than we should. And that's what you do when you're understaffed. You get the work done and you make sacrifices. And if we're able to fill those positions, I think the load that some of the staff members are carrying won't be so strenuous.
Should we reward those folks with a merit bonus
No,
since they're working so hard?
no.
Okay. That's very clear. So I would suggest that if the staffing hasn't been needed for the 2 years, or that we've been able to function without it, I'm not sure that we absolutely need that much. The same thing goes with the planning department in 10-7-32-500. We're talking about a nearly $500,000 difference between actuals to budget.
You know, I really wouldn't, we've got some wonderful county employees, and they will work to get the job done. But I think if we do that, we are overburdening them, hoping that they will get the work done, knowing that we are not hiring the positions that we need to hire, and the positions are in the budget. We try and we don't hire. They understand that. But when we cut positions, I don't think they quite understand that. I wouldn't if I was an employee.
So what happens to all those extra funds? Well, first of all, I agree with you. I think our staff does an amazing job, which is part of the reason why I do think that they deserve a merit bonus, but that's secondary. What happens to those extra funds that aren't utilized? Can you reallocate those?
Return to fund balance. They close out the year.
The planning department.
It was page 29.
And so particularly to the planning department, we did fill that planning director position. And so we still have 2 others, if not 3, to fill in there. But if you're thinking about inspectors, knowing that the Roseland development's starting to move, Wilson Creek is starting to move, that there will be a lot of inspections. And you look at the entire Sugar Creek development along Harrisburg Road. So no, we anticipate an active year.
But the growth in Indian Land has slowed down, so all of Walnut Creek is kind of winding down, like all those developments. So you would think that,
Treetops is built out, I mean.
yeah.
But, well, the other question is, and maybe I'm wrong, I thought building permits had decreased.
They have.
They ebb and flow, yeah. I mean, slow.
So doesn't that determine the staffing?
When you're already behind in terms of staff vacancies, people have picked up the load, so there's still staffing need for what we see coming down the pike for the permits on the horizon.
But if I was a, and I'm going to be cynical, if I was a constituent, I would be asking those questions.
Can I'm gonna make a comment on the planning. We have been short-staffed, and I hear it from developers and other. We have got to increase our staff. I know we just hired a planning director, but that is very important. The city has been without a planning director. They've tried to recruit one for several years, and it's very important because there might be a temporary slowdown, but people are moving to this part of the world, and I don't think we need to cut back on planning because we don't have adequate staff to handle the requests that we have now.
Well, I think fundamentally what Mr. Graham had said about a constituent issue is that we would like to have some service standards in terms of, can we turn around the plan reviews? Can we do all these? That is maybe a shorter time frame. We have some state mandates that we have to achieve. But for our level of service delivery, they've been pushed out because our staff has been pushed and pulled on different things. But we can come up with a better service level too, based upon when we get to full staffing.
So, and I guess the culmination of the questions is, how much is that load that each building inspector is reviewing over the past year? Same thing for the planning department, so that we can fully understand that. Because right now, if you're looking at the data, it looks like for 2 years, we've been at the same level and been operating at what I would assume is a higher number than what we're projecting going forward based on the reduction of the building permits that have been applied for.
And we can provide that, but I think, as I said, across the board, when you look that we have vacancies in mechanics, we have vacancies in corrections, we have the increased demand across the organization based on growth in many of our departments. So we can give you for this year a per inspection or per building or whatever, but again, that ebbs and flows based upon what permits and different things. But it is more than just the inspection. It is a TRC, the review beforehand, so there is work being done there. But yes, we've absorbed it. I mean, again, mechanics, our fleet has taken on more cars. They've absorbed it.
We're overworking our employees in certain departments.
We make do, but we want to enhance our service level.
I agree. What I'm saying is, if it hasn't happened for 2 years, why do we assume that it's going to happen for the third year in a row?
Because if you can't fill positions, and I think even in a small business, and I ran a small business, I had positions open for a year or more because I couldn't find the right person. But it didn't mean that I did not need that. It meant that somebody else in the office had to do it, which was not fair, but they did it. So that's why I think we need these positions. In order to do the work needs to be done and not overwork our current employees. That's just to me, that's just looking out for your employees.
I think before we look at cutting back on allocations, we need to look at each department by department. And if there's areas that we can cut back on staffing, then maybe we need to adjust that. But if we adjust this out of the budget, and 2 years from now, we need 10 more people in the building department, we've adjusted that out of our budget, and we're not going to be able to make it back up.
That's right, absolutely.
We can adjust it as they come along, but then one other question. So as we go through this budget, if we approve those line items and those positions aren't filled, are you able to use, Mr. Marstall, those funds and reallocate them to other expenses?
No, I mean, no. I have a $20,000 line item transfer, but I would only keep them within departments generally and within the salary wages line item. So yes, there's some room, but not too extensive.
So in that authorization that you have, it's restricted to the same exact line item in that same budget?
No, but just as practice, you don't generally move salary and wages down to operating.
Yep.
You try to keep the salary and wages contained. So yes, I could move some things between, if in development services, between planning and building to the $20,000 limit.
So I understand that in practice, but there's no restriction on you from doing that.
I mean, if it's a new position that we have not funded, that's when you have to come back to council.
Yeah, I can't do it for new positions.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for a new, my question was, are you restricted by that ordinance from reallocating those funds somewhere else.
Up to 20,000,
That's the only restriction,
yes.
by line item. And then you can move other line items as well. There's no restriction in how many line items.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Even if a department wants to make a move, they come before council to make a move or have a conversation with you to move money around. Am I correct?
Department directors can move up to 10,000, so they can move a little bit within their department, within their line items.
Okay, but
If there's an opportunity, if there's something comes up, I can move between departments, but departments have to stay within their
right, okay.
budgets.
And I assume the surplus goes in fund balance, which is why we got fund balance.
Right, it all returns.
I'd like to direct you to the last pages, 43 of 48.
Of the 107 pages.
No, the last little group of pages is 58. And so if you'll just kind of go from the back and work your way back to page 43. At the very,
3 of 58.
yes. So I just want to be on the agenda being recorded is pointing this out, that in our airport fund, last year we budgeted $207,738 that was going to have to make up our shortfall from our operating expenses at the budget. And for this coming year, it is recommended at $477,600. So the airport is going to cost us cash flow out of pocket, $477,600.
I want to make sure if I'm looking at that right, though, it does say the revenue, and I believe that that is a revenue line that reflects, let me double check that.
That's your interdepartmental transfer.
Right, and
Is that the?
Does that include the fuel?
well,
It's a transfer from the general fund.
yes, but I also need to see if that reflects the grants that we're receiving from the State Aeronautics Commission and potentially from the federal government. So all the transfer for revenue in, yeah.
You have a complete explanation on that?
I did ask for that 2 meetings ago and never got it, so I wanted to point it out here again, that we don't know what the airport's doing.
You may not know. You need to ask questions.
I did 2 meetings ago at least, maybe 3. Never, yeah.
You asked us in a budget session.
But Louise, did I ask that question in open budget or open?
What was your question that you asked?
How much were we planning on having to make up in shortfall for the airport?
Yeah, how much does it cost?
It looks like to me on this budget, it's going to cost us almost $500,000. Just wanted to point it out.
And Alan, we know your position on the airport, so I think it's some
But I don't,
regret there when it comes to, the necessity of an airport, and, we said this so many times, and we know certain things that we have to provide for our county, and this is one of them. And I don't know why we keep going back to the airport.
Because it is hemorrhaging a lot of money. That's why we go back. That's why I go back to it. Just want to point it out.
Okay.
If you're happy with spending $500,000 for X number of jets to land on the runway and take off and not provide any income, then that 4 people on this council can decide that's okay.
It all goes
Mr.
back
Harper,
to
may I?
economic development.
Mr. Harper, may I? To your point, Mr. Blackman, we did provide that information to you in one of your circulations on April 10th, and it's question number 9 regarding the airport. So you can refresh there. Thank you.
so, and just to go back to Mr. Blackman's point, I think it's not necessarily an issue with what his position is about the airport, but just restating the facts on where we stand with the airport and what the assumptions were that we were making and what we're actually looking at now, and then trying to understand what benefit are we actually getting from having the airport and the investment that we're making into the airport. Yeah, it's not a decision for you all. I think he's making the point for all of us.
Chairman Harper and Councilman Louise, I just also wanted to clarify with the question that you asked about planning. Planning and zoning were combined within the last year, and so if you actually looked at page 26 of 107, Fund 10729, you will see that that's completely zeroed out, and that is where zoning had lived. But now planning and zoning have been combined, and I just wanted to make that point.
So there's not such a big increase, really?
Nope, there has to be because there's no actual expenses on page 26. So those may have been included already, correct. So those are excess expenses.
And we'll go through that. We'll go through that and give you some more information.
Did that make sense to everyone? I understand that building and zoning was combined, but they were already combined in total in what's showing in the planning line item. Expenses.
So the only thing we need, or I think where you're at, is to identify what you want to publish for the operating millage for first reading for the general fund.
On the revenue, let's make sure we got everything. And you're going to get me the breakdown on the interest income off our general fund and off of ARPA. ARPA is separate because there should be a significant amount of revenue from.
And yeah, we've done the investments and different things. So
See it in here.
we did. We'll pull it. Yep, we'll have that for you. Plus a lot of the other options or information that we talked about from the other revenue projections. We've got information to get back with you about inspectors, staffing, some other things. So yeah, we've got a variety of notes like we've done in the past. We've done follow-up Q&A with you that we'll present those back out to you.
All right, so you need a
Need a
recommendation on the millage. This would be the maximum millage that then the council can adjust it down.
Yeah, you can adjust it.
this is,
Second reading. This is first reading.
And this is for,
We also need our fund balance. Current fund balance compared to a year ago, too.
Oh, you went. Oh, gotcha.
And the recommended amount to keep us within our credit rating.
Okay.
Okay, so at this point, it has to go in the paper for the public hearing notice, and you need council to we have to put the proposed millage value and number of meals in the public hearing notice. And this number can go down if council votes it, but we don't need to publish a number and then go up on it.
The way the public hearing notice will read is estimated, and it would be a cap. So when you actually adopt your budget, it could be less than that, but we cannot go above whatever millage you put in that public hearing notice, or then we're not in compliance with the law.
So we need a motion for a.
So the current ordinance in front of you has got I believe the 3.5 in it for first reading. So we need to adjust wherever you need to be. I believe today you were talking somewhere near 4.2 or maybe more based on the figures. So that's where we've got to go. You've got to amend the budget that's in front of you, which has only a 3.5 increase millage increase at the moment.
But it,
We need to do it in the
Right,
state.
that's, yeah, there's each one. You've got the general fund, the capital improvement fund, the county debt, and then the USCL are all in there.
but it doesn't include the capital improvement millage increase, which is 2. You don't have to say that.
No, it's stated already.
What you have in the ordinance is already, those 2 mills are in there, so unless you
So it's
change
in the
that,
ordinance.
it's already
Okay.
in the ordinance.
Okay, that's fine. So that'll be published too?
Yes, sir.
So, because I wouldn't like a constituent to get it and read that the millage increase is whatever we say, 3.5, but in reality, it's 5 point something.
So if it would help council, the South Carolina Code Annotated 6180 says, among general other things, you do have to have in your proposed total projected revenue and operating expenditures for the next fiscal year as estimated. So again, that's where you get that flexibility in next year's budget for the governing entity. That's among other things, but that's one thing that we've got to have in there. The proposed or estimated percentage change in estimated operating budgets between the current fiscal year and the proposed budget, the current millage, which you know that, and the estimated millage in dollars as necessary for the next fiscal year's proposed budget. So the words estimated are in there so that you have that flexibility on your readings to change things.
But not go above.
Correct, and in this instance, because of where we are with timing, you're gonna have third reading at the same time as your public hearing, so you're gonna have to set that cap. There's no way to set another public hearing at this point because you must have 15 days in order to publish it.
So according to the budget summary, where we've got the 3 to 5% to 5% increase, Christmas supplements, and on, that is entailing a 4.2 millage increase, right? So we can make the motion to say a 4.2 mill increase, no more than.
Yes, ma'am, that'd be the cap that you're setting that could be published. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, well, I'm going to make that motion that our,
Whatever that number will be.
make sure I'm saying it right, Jenny,
Yes, ma'am.
that our proposed budget be no more than 4.2 mills.
That'd be an additional 4.2 mils to what your current millage is, which is, correct me if I'm wrong, 88.8. So you're adding 4.2 to that. So whatever that total number comes to will be the millage that will be published.
That's my motion right there.
Or the general operating budget.
To the general fund, yes. That's what we're talking about at the
But see,
moment. It's just-
I'm stuck on this capital because it's going to be 2%, so it's really a 6.2%
So
increase.
the way it's broken down on the public hearing notice, and our budget director can help me there to make sure, because she submitted one initially when we thought we were having it at second reading, and then we got a little bit with our timing, we had to change it. So it's split up. So the general fund will have whatever that 88.8 plus 4.2 is, and then the capital improvement fund will have 7.3, because that's that new additional 2 mils
Okay,
that's
that's
already
fine.
added. Yes, sir, it'll be in
As
there.
long as that.
Yeah, they're not added together, they're separated out.
That's fine.
Yes, sir.
So whatever we decide on, it can be no more than 4.2 if this motion carries.
Because it's estimated, it can't go beyond that, no ma'am, because we just don't have time to have another public hearing to do anything else.
That
Are
gives
the-
us some
The numbers on
flexibility.
page 16, are those the actual mills that you're talking about? 93, 6, and 7.3?
Yes, that is correct.
Right here,
That will be what is published.
Yeah, what's
In
on
the last
screen is
row.
what you're talking.
16. Is it back here?
It's on page 16.
It's titled Millage History. You're looking at the last line. Your changes are highlighted in yellow.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this at all.
Well, did Steve go? Shame on you.
He left it in my hands.
Okay. Well, it's a motion. I made a motion. I don't know whether we got a second on that.
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay.
Do we want to make a motion saying we're going to add 4.2 mills, or should we read out the mills as we've got shown here?
It'd probably be more clear, no offense, Councilmember McGriff, if we read out those millages as shown there to be the cap, the estimated to be published.
Category?
Thank you, Jenny.
Yes, ma'am. If you want to change your motion, Ms. McGriff, to do that, we can do that. Yes, ma'am.
To the county operation at 93, county debt at 6, county capital improvement at 7.3, right?
That's correct.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. McGriff. Do we have a second?
You're looking for a second, correct?
Yes, we need a second. If we don't get a second, then we're going to have a substitute motion setting what you think the meals need to be.
Correct.
Well, we got, oh, I can't discuss yet. I ain't got my second.
Do we have a substitute motion? I'm going to second the motion so we can have discussion.
Oh, Mr. Chair, the reason why I said name those is because we can't go above it, but we can always go below. I think will give us some flexibility in the discussion. Not to say we're going to do that amount, but whatever we come up with, if you're going to set an amount, that's what we got to go with. I think we need some, from where we at with our discussion, I think we need some flexibility.
Well, we're setting the cap, the top cap. Now, do we have discussions about changing this? Do we have an amendment? Hearing no discussion, I'm going to call for the vote. Or should we wait until the chairman comes back in? We'll wait until the chairman comes back so that we have everybody voting.
You might have some discussion. You might have some discussion. I'm gonna comment before he gets back. I really don't like this millage increase. I really don't. I hope that these numbers, we find some more revenue that we can use, projected revenue or something changes that I just can't see, putting this much on our citizens. I really can't. So I know. I understand.
I don't know. I don't like putting it so high to begin with.
I agree, Terry.
But we've got to make a decision.
I'm more in the 3 or 3.5.
Listen, we're at a position here, and we're at a time constraint. We got to make a decision so we can get the public hearing schedule, y'all. All this kicking and talking, y'all, we got to make a decision. Everybody's not going to be happy with everything.
They ain't nobody gonna be happy with this, though.
But we still got to compromise so we get to a point where we can get some things done.
What are you unhappy with, Ms. McGriff?
I'm unhappy with some of the cuts that was made, but I went along with it. Because I know we've got to do something in order to pass this budget.
Well, since we're in general discussion, Mr. Mostello, I agree with what you said. When you look at that far right column, 5.3 mil increase. Last year, we held it at 2.6. The year before, 1.1. In my opinion, we're trending the wrong way. And I'm disappointed in this budget process. We haven't spent enough time with our department heads. I just can't support what we've done. All we've done was pick apart like a little wish list. What do y'all want? Instead of getting into the meat of the budget and trying to figure out what we can have and what do we have now. And honestly, I don't know.
You know, what I think is that a lot of the questions that you have are questions you needed to ask before you got here. Because some questions you can talk to the finance department, you can talk to Dennis, get those questions answered. We nitpicking questions. This is not the avenue for that. You sit down with these folks here and you talk about it. The questions, Alan, you had, some of that information you could have already had. If I got a question, I'm not waiting till the day. I'm calling Dennis and I'm saying, I need to come over and talk to you. I'll sit down and talk to you. But to prolong it with these nitpicking questions is just not what we need to be doing.
Well, before our last meeting, that we didn't vote on the first reading, the manual was wrong, and you didn't even catch it. So you didn't have any questions because you didn't read it.
I did, Alan. I went through, but I
Then
didn't have
you
the
should have seen
questions
that column.
you had.
You should have seen that the
No,
column
I
was
don't have the
wrong.
question that you had because I know that
point
people
made.
make mistakes in numbers. If you had found a mistake, you should have brought it to our attention before we got to this table.
We got our agenda, like I say, 3 days before,
I read mine. Now,
so-
don't you say I didn't.
but you didn't catch that whole column
didn't.
thing.
Alan, I'm human. You don't catch everything.
That's major
But
catch.
if I had caught it, guess what? I'd have asked questions before I got to this table.
Have some order.
So if I could just clarify, so I think one of the things that we're talking about when we have discussions in public is precisely so that the public understands what we're looking at. And I think that transparency and the questions that we ask are imperative so that the public understands and entrusts us with the funds that we are receiving from their pockets.
I quite understand that, Jose, and I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about questions that you have that you can clear those questions up before you get here and have additional questions. I'm not talking, I quite understand how we do the budget, but I'm talking about nitpicking and going through and wondering why, this is not, no, that's not what we do. That's not what we do. Might be what y'all do, but it's not what I've been doing for how many years? I'm finished.
That's all the fun.
Yeah, you did.
So I want to make sure we have a motion on the floor would you repeat that for me, please? I would.
So the motion was, sorry, I'm having to look at the screen, that the millage would be capped on county operating at 93, county debt at 6.0, and county capital improvement at 7.3.
All right, we had a motion and a second. No amendments on that?
Not so far.
We offered the opportunity for amendment.
Nobody offered an amendment.
All right, so
I'll offer an amendment for 3 mills
you 3 mills on what?
on the increase for county operating. I guess it would be at 90. No, 2.5. What would it be? It wouldn't be 93, it'd be what number? 4.2, 93. Taking it to 3 mills.
To 3 mills, it would be 91.8.
91.8.
All right, if we do that, we've got to go back and,
And you're going to have to go back and cut quite a bit.
correct?
Or revenue. I mean, we haven't had that conversation.
We did have that conversation.
Well, I mean,
We actually made a motion on that.
We need justification on those numbers. That's what we said. Before we put anything in the budget, we need a justification, just
All right,
not
we
a,
have an amendment from Mr. Graham to
Have a
cap,
second.
the increase to how many mills? 3 mills. And you have a second.
That's on operating, he said.
On only the county
On
operating, the other ones are the same.
And I have a second. No second. So Mr. Graham's motion.
All right, I'd like to make an amendment that we hold county operating at 88.8 mills.
I second.
We discuss, please.
All right, we have an amendment to leave the county operating
at 88.8.
88.8 mills.
In dollar amounts, how
We
much
have a
would that,
second from
Jose?
Mr. Louise.
How much would that in dollar amounts? What would that calculate into dollars?
You're basically keeping it at last year's budget.
Yeah, I know, but I want to hear the dollar amount.
Well, it's 518 times
Times
Yeah.
whatever, the difference.
times 4.2, which is 2.3 million. Is that correct?
Yeah, the difference on that sheet, well, the delta we're trying to make, but if you take the 88.8 times the millage, that doesn't seem to come out.
4.2 times 518, $2.175 million.
Okay, now, please understand, we've got to go back and cut that amount. So that might end up with no increases to no bonus, no Christmas supplement, no across the board salary increase. Because if we say no more than 3, that's what we got to go on, right, Jenny?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so please understand, we've got to really do some cutting before now and the third reading.
Cutting or either some more revenue.
Yeah.
That's, as Terry said, that'll be 0 meals, because we're not moving. But, we really got to at least be sensible about this thing. I mean, we got to have some room to move here. I won't be at the second reading, and I hate it, but by the time I get back, I guess y'all have everything done for me to vote against it.
I don't want to cut ourselves short. I know the impact of taxpayers, but, this is still first reading, and I agree. I think there's some adjustments to some revenue that will be adjusted up.
And if we can adjust the revenue, Mr. Chair, to make up the difference, I have no problem with that. But I do think we need at least some flexibility on moving forward and be able to give our employees the salary increase, the Christmas supplement, and other things that we need. Because right now, we're tying our own hands.
Any more comments?
What was your comment about the?
I just don't want to make sure we don't sell ourselves short. I mean, this is, what we advertise, we could go below it. But if we advertise no tax.
No increase, we're gonna be up the wall, up the creek.
We're restricting ourselves.
We haven't voted on it yet. It's on the floor discussed.
I do have concerns. I do agree that there will be additional revenue, and hopefully there won't be a tax increase, but I don't want to cut our employees short. And some adjustments that really need to be made to keep some valuable employees. But that's just my thought.
Yeah, my thoughts too is I'm hoping we're going to find more revenue. Lord, pray that we do. But we've got to try to keep our millages as low as possible, because, like I say, our citizens are really struggling right now, and I just don't want to increase it. But I think we got to have a little bit, but because there's some stuff in here that we do need to do. But what I'm wanting to do in here, I'm hoping we get enough revenue that's going to offset it, and we ain't going to have no millage adjustments. So that's what I'm hoping and praying on, is we end up with more revenue to offset it.
So even if we vote on Terry's motion for the 3%, and the revenue comes in more and we're able to meet budget, we may not even have to do the 3%, right?
So for clarity, Councilmember Graham's amendment died because it did not get a second.
Because nobody else bought that story, which I thought was sensible.
So the current amendment on the floor is Councilmember Blackman's, which is
0, which I
remaining at
can't support that.
He didn't get a second, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
He's got the second, so that's the one we're on now is Councilmember Blackman's.
All right, any more discussion on Mr. Blackman's amendment? All right, we have an amendment from Mr. Blackman to maintain the county operating millage at 88.8 mills in our next budget.
Let me ask one more question. Dennis, if this motion passes, that means no salary increases, none of that, because that's adding to the budget. What I'm asking Dennis.
Refigure the budget.
We'd have to,
Asking Dennis.
we'd have to refigure the budget, and so we have to take into account if there is any different revenue estimates you're comfortable with, and if we would do reductions in other areas.
It may be reduction in other areas, but we gotta find additional revenue to even meet it at 88 point, whatever it is.
Do you get it through new revenue or reductions through cuts? So,
Good luck.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may clarify as well, and Councilmember Blackman, tell me if I am incorrect, it's a 0 mil increase, so 88.8 to the operating, but the county debt will be 6, and the county capital will be 7.3. Is that clarifying your motion to be correct? Thank you.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Blackman to keep millage at 88.8. For our, this will be for our operating, and this will be advertised in the paper.
It will be advertised, estimated at 88.8, yes.
All right, and then we'll have to work our budget, second reading from that, and the revenue. Okay. All right, we have a motion from Mr. Blackman. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed likewise. His motion fails, 2 for and 5 opposed. All right, let's move on down.
and actually, I'll pick this up real quick if you want to go, Ms. Pavuznak, to the.
We need to know what the millage is. We don't.
We still got to pass the millage.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
need something.
You gotta have a millage, you've gotta have a millage.
Yeah, we have to
I'll
have
do
public.
my motion again for 3. For,
Motion is second.
3.
3 over here.
Want to do his at
Mr. Graham made a motion, Ms. McGriff seconded for a 3 mil, so that would put it at 91.8.
91.8.
All right, and you second that, Ms.
Yeah, I can live with that.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Graham, second from Ms. McGriff. Discussion on that.
With the remaining.
And again, just to
We can always
clarify,
go lower. I mean, that's what we're advertising it as.
This is for,
and to clarify for the record, that that is remaining the county debt at 6 and the county capital at
Correct.
7.3.
any discussion? I think we're ready to vote on Mr. Graham's motion of capping our operating county budget at 91.8 mils. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed likewise. Mr. Graham's motion passes by a vote of 5 for and 2 opposed. All right, what are we looking for now?
We got 2 more topics. One quick one is for the capital, if Ms. Pavuznak will advance that. I just need, we have taken off the table the capital. Can you advance that?
I cannot. My
Ms.
clicker is
Simpson, can you advance that?
not happening.
There you go. So we have taken off the table from your last conversation any countywide capital millage for fire. There's been questions about how can we get more apparatus? How can we do our capital program to fund it going forward? We do have we just talked about our capital millage county debt, which is going from 6.9 mils down to 6 mils just based upon the outstanding debt we have and the payment we have. So my question to council is, are you looking for, if you'll advance that slide, is county council looking for a bond package for different capital items to go out in July or August? So are you interested in using general obligation debt to buy a couple of new fire engines or fire apparatus? Do you want to consider, if you'll actually back up one, do you want to consider some convenience side improvements? Do you want to consider some of these additional upfits? There are things we can make a package of 10 million, 20 million within our current bonding capacity. I just want to check in. Do you want to have that conversation in July or August? Because if
I question spending $12 million on the fire department. I mean, we're going to look at one tomorrow, this 25% of that, so.
right, I get, so what do you put in the bond package we can talk about between these and other things? I just want to make sure I'm in sync, because I know we've been concerned about why aren't we on the cycle of replacing fire apparatus? Where are we at? I want you to see what some of the needs have been requested from the departments, particularly with fire. And so we can address this through general obligation. That again would impact our debt millage. And so if you want to do anything with fire apparatus, I'll be happy to bring that back to you in July. So I don't need to.
Is that agreeable?
Let's
Yes,
get it
I
behind the
agree.
budget. Let's get through the
Okay,
budget.
we can
do that.
bring something back to you. And then the last topic is fire for the Indian Land Consolidated. And if Ms. Snowden wants to cover that real quick.
Good evening, Chairman and members of council. Last week, we discussed this and had input from President Andres of the Indian Land Fire Commission, as well as Director Player and Chief Nicholson and Chief Miller. So what you see on the screen is the Indian Land Funding Plan, which primarily is looking at increasing the fee. There would be no change in the ERU square footage formula, and it would actually fund approximately $7.5 million. That would mean 26 additional positions to include 7 captains and a training captain, 6 engineers, 6 senior firefighters, 6 firefighter ones, 1 administrative assistant, and the rooftop fee would go from $150, it would be increased to $265. That's a $115 annual increase, and again, no change in the ERU square footage formula. And then this will actually show you, this next slide actually shows you on the right the increase in the fee. Any question?
So the ERU is currently 1,000 square feet?
1,000,
I
yes.
thought it was 1,500.
No, it's 1,000. That was changed last.
There was
fiscal
another
year.
screen that we looked at last week. It had the ERU at 750.
Yeah, that was actually I gave you a bunch of different scenarios, but from our time last week, I thought that you really wanted me to just focus on the, on increasing the fee.
Well, well, maybe, and that could be my fault.
Oh, that's
I was also interested in looking at the ERU.
okay.
Because I think that, I mean, you're going from 150 to
It went from
265.
1,000
It's pretty substantial, and the 750 was a lot less, even though it put it would put a harder burden on the commercial, and I think the commercial and the residential ought to share in this increase.
Okay.
So I think when we looked at the 750, which is what I think Councilmember Graham is referring to.
Yes.
We were talking about a $240 fee amount under that scenario, and it would be about a 7.4 million, which I think was more in line with more precise to what we were asking for originally.
Yes, sir. What I can do is actually bring that back, the 750 ERU. Okay. So that's the direction that you'd like to really see, and not an increase in the
Y'all
fee?
thought about the burden between commercial and residential?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Got the numbers of the calls?
No, we haven't seen that, and I would like to see that. Also, I had a little discussion with one of the fire chiefs and indicated that maybe the commercial it was more complicated to service, maybe. I don't know that, Alan.
The commercial and the apartments is what my understanding were more what was driving these increases, especially with the new trucks. And then if we look at the differences between the 1,000 square foot ERU to the 750, it's about $194,000 increase for the commercial, but it impacts the residential by about 440,000, something like that. So it's a much more significant increase for the residential, or decrease for the residential, and a much better, I think.
Has there been any consideration to maybe make this a 2-stage process? You know, like half the firefighters in year 1,
I would think, yeah, that's,
I mean, I'm just asking.
well, that was my question when I was, I still got the lingering doubts whether they really need 26 in this first year. I mean, I don't think they do need that.
Right.
I mean, but I'm not the expert.
And I think if I'm correct, the discussion was that this budget would apply starting in January. So it already includes that time frame to build it up to those folks.
All right, so just so that I have clarity, you want to see a 750 ERU, not so many scenarios, and that's where you're landing.
I think I feel more comfortable with the 750 and 240, but that's,
He's on one vote, too.
All right, I will definitely bring that back.
Brian, you're the other.
I agree. It's not only going to hit commercial, it's going to hit all the other categories there as well. So residential is just going to lower their fee.
And then by doing this, that money for the fire district will go toward paying off the debt, the $1 million loan or something they have.
Yeah, I'll assume that's in their budget.
It's already in their budget.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Clarification.
So we do need with again, the publishing of the public hearing notice, we do have the fee schedule listed in there, and the rooftop fee for Indian land is currently listed what is existing. So I need an amendment to change the fee schedule for the dollar amount that you want for the Indian land rooftop fee.
I'll make a
Chairman,
motion.
Make a motion that we change the fee schedule subsequent to match the fee schedule that we discussed today, which is $750 per ERU and $240 for each residential unit.
I think you meant $240 and 750 square foot ERU.
Yeah.
And I second that.
Thank you.
Too many dollars in it. Okay, do I have a second for that? Second. I have a second from Mr. Louise. Any discussion on our amendment? Hearing none, we're ready to vote. All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, likewise, we have unanimous approval. And so at this point, we're looking for any other motions to continue this to second reading.
I think at this point, if you're done with all your amendments that you want for this to get us to public hearing and to get through first reading, we need a motion of first reading as all of these amendments that were done last Monday and today.
Somebody,
I'll make that motion that we
And I'll second it.
we have a motion.
do whatever she said.
But that will also clarify, though, this motion that we have a limited operating budget. So the numbers here amended won't match the millage, correct? So
We'll have to work on
Be
it.
correct,
we need to
yes.
cover that in the motion, do we not, to be safe?
Did not. But
Good. Do you want to do the motion, Alan?
No, because I'm against the budget right now. So y'all make the motion, and but I think it just ought to be that.
with Alan, I'm against the budget.
Jenny, how should we?
All right, let's say, I'll make the I'll make a motion, but I need to know exactly what I need to say.
Yeah.
So at this point, you made a lot of amendments last Monday. You've made a lot of amendments this evening that the clerk and I have kept up with. I think you have about 11 at this point today, as well as 9 last Monday. So first reading as amended with everything that you have actually made motions on and amended. And then to Councilmember Blackman's point, there are some things that need to come back that will continue to be discussed with the expenditures, the revenues, et cetera. So
That's the motion.
that's how the motion needs to be done, as convoluted as that is.
Do you make that motion?
I make that motion.
And I
As I
second
stated.
And I have a second from Ms.
right
McGriff.
here.
All in favor, raise your right hand. Opposed, likewise. Motion passes by 5 for and 2 opposed. Let's move on down to our adjournment at 4:55 p.m. Do I have a motion? to
So
adjourn?
moved.
Motion for Ms. McGriff. I have a second, please.
Second.
Second for Mr. Blackman. All in favor, raise your right hand. We have unanimous approval. This meeting is adjourned.
And this is like picking cotton.
Have you ever picked cotton?
Only on a field trip.
Hey, Bill, it's like